Some people are 100% certain that there's no need for anyone to learn to code anymore. AI is going to take over soon, so all the people interested in code should look for jobs somewhere else, like in plumbing, as if that's a job everyone's really eager to get to. Well, I strongly disagree. If you look at this Newstack article, it says 97% of people have a really hard time with infrastructure as code. And only 13% of companies think that they're mature in IAC. And that all tells me that companies are still really interested in this skill, but it's really hard to find people, which means you can look at this as a challenge and that is an opportunity. Now, when you learned the cloud, you probably started here in the portal, clicking buttons and filling out boxes just to get what you want. Now, the only real drawback to this manual approach is that it is complete and utter chaos. You're gonna click like 100 things to get your VM built and configured properly. But what happens when you need to reproduce that? Well, this is where infrastructure as code can really help you. Now, I know right now, all this code just looks like this to you. But by the end of this video, you'll be able to read the code and see what's really happening. And I've got 3 secrets to help you unlock this matrix, and even a couple bonus secrets at the end if we have time. So let's take the red pill and see how far the rabbit hole goes. Now, the first secret here is choosing the right code. Your cloud resources can be written in PowerShell or Azure CLI, but those are much better for managing existing resources. To deploy resources, you should really learn ARM and Bicep. With those languages, you have to say every detail step by step and make all the connections yourself. But with these, you just write what you want and Azure will translate your vision into reality. And Bicep in particular is even easier to learn. It's simpler to write, it's modular, it's easier to read, making reusability a breeze. Now, writing the right code takes the right tools. VS Code is one that you really need if you're going to use Bicep, because it literally writes the code for you. Now, if you haven't installed VS Code yet, just open your Windows terminal and type winget space install space Microsoft.Visual Studio Code. And that'll be installed in just a moment. Inside VS Code, you want to look at the activity bar on the left and click over here. These are the extensions. This is how we train VS Code to learn more skills.
I know Kung Fu.
Just type Bicep in the search box and then hit install. And there's a few others that you should install too. And here's a list so you can pause the video if you need to. And with all that installed, we're ready to bend reality to your will. So let's jack in and start writing some code. Click on File and then make a new one. Give it a name with a .bicep extension, and then pick to save it somewhere. And this is where the third secret will really help you. Just type RES, and you're going to get a list of all of the Azure resources that you can just simply pick. Now type a dash and then WVD and select the host pool. Now that wasn't so hard, was it? And this is the third secret, IntelliSense, and that's going to write most of the code for you. Just type in the Azure region that you want to build in, and now we're ready to send it off to Azure. So right-click on the file, and then go to Deploy Bicep File, sign into Azure if you need to, and your deployment here will have this name, so just hit Enter. Select your subscription, and then your resource group, and then if you have a parameters file, which we'll select none for now, and you're done. Jump over to the Azure portal, and here is our brand new host pool, just like that. That took about 10 seconds. And we're going to build from here to get a fully deployed and functional Azure Virtual Desktop environment running for you. But if you want a video diving deeper, comment below with the word param. So let's start customizing this code. Now to do that, we need to understand the code. And the first part here is the declaration of what we're building. This is a resource. Right next to it is something called the symbolic name. And that might be a little confusing when you first type it in, because right now it says host pool, but this can be anything. So let's change it to Bob. Next is the resource provider, which in this case is Microsoft.Desktop Virtualization /host pool. Then we have the @ symbol and the API version. Now you can delete the API up to the @ symbol and then type the @ symbol again, and you'll see a list of all the APIs that you can pick from. On the next line, we have the name of the pool once it gets built, and then we have the location, which is the Azure region, and next are the properties of the pool. And the description and friendly name, those are just text, but the other ones here have specific values, like host pool type, which could be either pooled or personal. So just highlight the value here, and then on your keyboard, press Control Space, which will bring up IntelliSense, and then just select the one you want. And do the same thing for the load balancer type and the app group type. Then just deploy the file like you did before. So what other things could we possibly add here? Well, make a new line under the app group, press Control Space for IntelliSense, then add something new like max session limit for 10 users, or validation environment, or enable Start VM on Connect. And that's the essence of how to write anything in Bicep for any kind of resource. So let's add another one. Go to a new line and type res-wvd and select your app group. Change the symbolic name here to Sally. Set the API, the name, and the location like we did before. And now we need to associate it with the pool. And that's this last line here. We want the ID of the pool, so erase this value, and then type in the symbolic name, Bob, then put a period and select ID. Then go ahead and deploy that too. And we need a workspace so the users will be able to access the app group. So back here in the code, go to a new line, res-wvd, select your workspace, set the symbolic name, the API, the name of the workspace, and the location, just like before. And now we need to associate the app groups with the workspace. So add a new line right here, start up IntelliSense with Control Space, and notice the first thing on this line here, square brackets. What that means is, unlike some other things which are just single declared values or strings, this is an array, so it can take multiple values. So inside our array, start IntelliSense again and pick Sally. Then do a dot and ID. And then go ahead and build again. And there's the app group now associated with the workspace. Now there's 4 total WVD resources, and we've already covered 3 of them. And the last one is a little complicated, and that's our session hosts. So new line, type res-wvd, but there's no option to build a session host. Well, what exactly is a session host? Well, a host is not an Azure resource, which is why it's not here on the list. The session host is not even a virtual machine. The session host is an agent that gets installed on any Azure VM, and that agent joins to the host pool. So we just need to build a Windows VM. Now VMs have 3 parts: the VM, the disk, and the NIC. So select here the VM-Windows. And another thing we need to think about here is how VMs are made. Well, the image that we're referencing will create a new disk for us automatically, and that's all part of the code here. But the NIC is not so lucky. We actually need to create that first, and then reference it here inside the virtual machine. So scroll up before the VM and type res-nic, and update the code just like we did before. And now notice here that the NIC needs a subnet ID. Well, we can actually add that in a few ways. You could do a resource ID lookup just like this, or you could use an existing resource. And we start those just like any other new resource. So go to a new line, do res-vnet, and now here at the end of the line after the API, type existing. And that'll tell Azure that this thing already exists and we're just referencing it. Put in the name of the VNet over there and then repeat that for the subnet. Now your NIC can reference the subnet ID of the symbolic name of your subnet like this. So with the NIC done, let's go back to the VM. Update the symbolic name and the API, the VM name, the location, and then use IntelliSense to pick your size. Then down here in the OS profile, the computer name inside Windows comes from this value. And normally we want that to match the name of the VM. Then we have our admin username and admin password. And yes, this is clear text for now, and you can see Bicep isn't too happy about it. We'll come back to this one in a minute. Scroll down, and here's the OS disk name, and make sure you're referencing the NIC ID. Now, before we build it, we have to take care of these little yellow squigglies. If you mouse over the password, Bicep tells you that this must be a secure value, so it's not going to accept just text here. For that, we need to scroll all the way up to the top, and on a new line, type the word param, give it a name like admin username, then a space, and Bicep wants to know what kind of thing this is. In this case, it's just text, so select a string. Now, if you want to set a specific value for this, you can put in equals, and then inside the quotes, type in the username. Now, there is another way to do this where you get prompted, and that's what we're going to want for our password. So start another parameter just like before, call this one admin password, and this time we want to select secure string. Now we see that the value here is a string, but on the line right before it, we have this secure property. And that's how we actually modify parameters in Bicep. And while we're at it, let's add one more. On the line before secure, type the @ symbol, and then select description. And then you can put a prompt inside the parentheses just like this. Finally, go back to your OS profile, and we want to change these squigglies for our new parameters. And we're ready to deploy again. But this time, we're going to do it a little different. And this is the first of 2 bonus secrets that I have for you. Right-click on the Bicep file, and this time select Build ARM Template, and then open it. Now, VS Code actually does this function in the background every time you did a deployment because Azure only speaks ARM. Bicep exists to make our lives easier in writing the code. Now, you could deploy this with the command line here in VS Code, but instead, copy everything and go to the Azure portal. Search at the top for templates, and then select Deploy a Custom Template. Click the Edit button here, and then paste your code, and click Save at the bottom. Then just pick your resource group and type in your password, and click Create. So far, we have built our host pools, app groups, workspaces, built a network card referencing our subnet that exists already, and we've provisioned a VM. Now we need to do 2 more parts, and that's going to require VM extensions. So down at the bottom, type res space dsc, and you want to pick this one. And the matrix here actually gave us a VM resource as a reference, which we can just delete because we already built it. Now we just need to do the needful. Change your symbolic name, your API, the name of your resource, and your location, just like before. And now we actually have a new property here, parent. This is another way to reference resources inside a Bicep file. So change the name here to match the symbolic name of our VM. And as for the settings, I have no idea what these are supposed to be, but I know how to find out. This is the GitHub Azure Quick Start repository. It's a great place to find all the official templates for just about everything in Azure. Click on the main.bicep file and scroll down, and you can see that there's a parameter here called artifact location. And this is the zip file that's going to be in that DSC package that'll accomplish joining this machine to the pool. So copy that value, go back into Bicep, and while we could put it right here, Bicep wouldn't be happy about it because it wants a variable here so the template can be more reusable. So let's scroll up to the top. Right after all of your parameters, get a new line and type var. Give it a name like modules URL, then put in the equals and the quotes, and then paste your value inside the quotes. Now go all the way back down to your DSC and replace the modules string here with the variable. Now we need to deal with this configuration function. I don't know what that's supposed to be, so let's go back to the quick start. And I know this because I've already browsed around here, but over on the left, you'll find folders for the modules, which are sub-templates to do a build. Inside there, we've got one for session hosts. And open that Bicep file, scroll down until you find the DSC, and there's the value that we need to use this particular package. But now, hold on a second. There's some additional properties here. We need to reference what host pool we're going to make this a member of, and the VM's join type. And below that, we've got registration token information. And that depends on Entra ID join. And that's actually referencing another extension, which is right here. So copy all of those things and then go back to Bicep and drop them in place. Then right-click your Bicep file and create a new ARM template. Copy everything, go back to the portal, click search, and then select right here to deploy from template. Hit the edit, paste in your code, fill it out just like before, and click the build. Then you can go over to the AVD portal and see that we've got a new host registered in the pool. So that's building AVD from scratch using Bicep, but I've got one more bonus for you. Now jump back over to one of your host pools, and then go to the properties and copy the resource ID. Now go back to VS Code. Create yourself a new Bicep file, and then on your keyboard, press Ctrl-Shift-P, and that'll open the command palette. Type here Bicep insert resource, and then paste your resource ID. And in just a few seconds, that pool will be imported into Bicep exactly as it is. Now this is great for learning how to improve your existing code and build for features that you don't know how to write. Things like the scheduled agent updates, or how to configure RDP short path, or all of those complex RDP properties. And you can even do something like this for multiple resources in the Azure portal. Just go to your resource group and then on the left, scroll down to the bottom and click Export Template. And in just a few seconds, Azure will create an ARM template for you of everything in this resource group exactly as it's configured. Click the copy template at the bottom, go back to VS Code, create a new file with a .json extension, and paste in your code. Now your language here in the bottom corner should automatically change to Azure Resource Manager. If not, just click here and set that. And if you are the one, then you can right-click on that JSON file and select Decompile into Bicep. And now you've got everything configured exactly as you want it right here in the code. And now that with all the basics down, you're going to want to watch this video and take your career to the next level. Happy learning.